Thank you, Amer. Thanks for the introduction, and I'm excited to be back here. Jim is a very easy act to follow, so I'm thrilled to follow in his footsteps here. I'm going to try to pick up where he left off. And today I'm going to talk about Agentic AI. And I'm going to double-click on a lot of what Jim said, and I'm going to explain how, when we think of Agentic AI transformations and our perspective on Agentic AI transformations, which is what I'm going to cover, we're not going to be talking about a language teacher running your business. We're going to be talking about how companies like yourselves, organizations, the largest enterprises in the world, are transforming using AI, but transforming in a really meaningful way and unlocking disproportionate economic value. So I'm first going to talk about our perspectives on these Agentic AI transformations, and then I'm going to switch gears and talk a little bit about the work we've done in product to actually enable this in a very meaningful way and to earn the right to be your transformation partner along this journey. So with that, let me just jump right in. So you saw this diagram. It was also in Jim's presentation, and I shared it with you yesterday. This is the product landscape. So you have, in most enterprises, very disparate data systems, often stovepiped, multiplicity of data lakes and data warehouses. And the first product, the first capability that's foundational to C3 AI is the C3 Agentic AI platform. And that layer unifies these data into common ontologies that then can power use case or applications. And the second layer you see is that applications layer and the workflow layer. And here we've spent the last 15 plus years building deep domain-specific applications, use cases that encapsulate business understanding in domains that are quite relevant to most of your business areas, whether it's asset management or supply chain, for example. And we've encoded this business knowledge into our applications. We've encoded them also into AI agents within these applications, workflow within these applications. So these applications can become increasingly autonomous. And where I'm going with this is these applications and use cases, these business use cases, foundational use cases, turns out that they're super important for your agentic transformation journey. So let me explain that a little bit more. In most organizations that have embarked on this and successfully transformed it to some extent or to a large extent, one of the biggest things we see is that, and Jim alluded to this in his presentation as well, we see disproportionate economic benefit from a few AI use cases. So, and I mean economic, but I also mean operational. So you might have a few use cases that, and you'll know what they are in your business based on the nature of your business, the nature of the opportunity, what you've already done, what remains to be done. But there are going to be these marquee use cases that really drive a large share of the economic benefit. And these, we're calling them major applications, but they involve domain-specific knowledge, they involve deep data understanding, they involve advanced AI and ML, kind of math modules for predictive analytics, they involve domain-specific agents, all working together to unlock that economic benefit. Then there's a second tranche, and these are what we call adjacent use cases. And these use cases are basically attached to that primary set of use cases, but they're on the periphery. For example, you may have, these might be mini applications, or they might be agentic workflows, and you may have in a supply chain use case, for example, attached to that a procurement use case, or RFX use case, or a pricing and quoting, or a contracting use case. And these are adjacencies that you can extend around those primary ontologies, those primary applications. And they unlock also significant value. So together, these two tranches constitute a vast majority of your AI transformation in terms of value and benefit and business rationale to do this. And then you'll have a long tail of other smaller use cases. And these could be individual agents, they could be individual workflows, or they could be general productivity improvements, right? Everyone has access to LLMs in most organizations today, and they need to use it. They need to infuse those into their everyday work in various ways. And these could be plugged into the ontology layer, or this tranche could also go directly from source data. You could be using Claude, for example, directly plugged into your enterprise through Cowork, or you could be using Gemini, or you could be using ChatGPT Enterprise. So that's what this long tail looks like. So let me illustrate that a little bit further. So if you conceptualize this a little bit, it looks like this. So the y-axis here is economic benefit. The x-axis are the AI use cases along your transformation journey. You're going to have these anchor AI applications, anchor AI use cases that are unlocking significant economic benefit. Then you're going to have those adjacent workflows, and then those smaller AI agents and productivity improvements. Now, we at C3 AI have really focused on those first two tranches of helping you unlock disproportionate economic benefit at scale through our applications, through the platform layer, through the domain-specific work that we've done over the last decade plus. But we've also built tools and capabilities to play in that third tranche. We can, through capabilities like C3 Code, our agentic frameworks, we can actually help you along the long tail as well. But we also understand that it's going to be a very heterogeneous ecosystem. So everything we build is open, interoperable. You can work with multiple agentic frameworks and systems, all tightly governed in an enterprise class governance layer. Now, I wanted to bring this to life. And in order to do that, I'm going to show a slide from Transform last year from one of our partners, Koch Flint Hills Resources. They're here this year as well in Transform. And they've done it's a delight to work with them. They're a great partner to us. And I'm going to call them out on one other slide in my presentation today. They laid out this vision in Transform last year, because they started by thinking about, hey, what are my anchor use cases? And this is in a petrochemicals context. This is in a refinery context. And they started to think about what are these manufacturing use cases that we want to go after that will unlock disproportionate economic benefit. And they actually laid out their full value chain here in manufacturing, where they're saying, hey, there's detection of anomaly, there's degradation of equipment, we want to think about EHS and economic benefit, we want to provide the historical context and information about all of our equipment, we want to think about the asset strategies, when is it right to actually maintain it, when is it not. They want to think about the failure forecast, recommended action. They want to think about the spare parts picture. This is more than one application. This is multiple applications. This is major applications and adjacent use cases interacting together. This is a full integrated workflow. So then they set about a plan to actually go after these things with the first application, and then the second, maybe smaller, anomaly detection being the first, response being the second. Then they thought about a Gen AI use case for turnaround and inspection planning. And then they thought about a spare parts forecast use case. So these kinds of use cases are how you start to piece together the transformation journey. And then they also realized that the economic value benefit is actually more than just the sum of these individual use cases. It's actually the collection of these working together in concert. And that also is an important part of these transformation journeys, is they can be mutually beneficial by considering the interaction across these use cases. And they did a great job at that. So fast forward a year from last year's Transform, at this point, we're actually ready to go live across this ecosystem of applications and use cases with them. So thank you for your partnership, and we're excited to continue down this journey with you all. I want to talk about a slightly different lens, and this goes to the autonomy side of what Jim was talking about. We definitely see this quite strongly, especially with capabilities like agentic process automation now launching. We're increasingly seeing the nature of work also change, where there's increasing autonomous kind of agentic systems running, unlocking value for the enterprise. And the pyramid of work kind of highlights what this looks like. So if you look at the base of the pyramid now, this is now where a large share of work can be automated, fully automated workflows that are running many, many use cases across your enterprise. Then you have a middle tier, and these are smaller, a subset of those workflows, a smaller set of those workflows may require occasional human involvement. So the workflows are largely running, but then there might be humans in the loop for things like occasional management, occasional exception management. And then you have the top of the pyramid, and this is where humans can be really valuable because we can apply our critical reasoning, our thinking, our real exception management. But this amount of work that hits this bucket, this top of the pyramid, has never been lower in terms of the history of business and what we can accomplish today. And this transformation is happening fast. And one aspect of this agentic transformation that we're seeing is that it actually frees up humans to plan more, to perform more critical thinking, and actually to be more proactive about the strategy of business. So I think there's a human capital strategy that layers on top of your agentic transformation strategy in order to optimize value capture. Okay, so now I'm going to switch gears. So this is our overall perspective on AI transformations. I'm now going to talk about why C3 Agentic AI? What have we done in our product to earn the right to be your transformation partner? Why select us? And there's many reasons. There's 5 main reasons that I'm going to walk you through. And I want to give you a feel for them first, and I'm going to go into each. The first is we have tried to anchor ourselves. We've tried to focus our entire company on the transformation of the largest enterprises in the world, the largest organizations in the world, which means we built our entire tech stack to fulfill this need. And this need requires us to fulfill high accuracy AI for mission critical operational use cases where we can't hallucinate, we can't make mistakes. We need it to actually work, we need it to work well. And I'll explain what we've done there. Second, we are strong believers in this concept, for a decade plus, actually since the very early days in C3, of the need for common object models that describe business. And it turns out that this context is now super important in the age of AI agents, because this is the way that agents really understand business context. And so we have an ontology-first architecture from the ground up that AI agents have a real easy time navigating. Okay, number 3. Full enterprise-grade operations, logging, monitoring, observability. We built all of the guardrails for responsible AI from the ground up in our stack. 4, multi-agent workflows. So this is the agentic process automation product that I talked about yesterday. We have really nailed that for autonomous operations that bring the best of what LLMs have to offer, agents have to offer, and bring the best also of what deterministic business workflows have to offer. And then lastly, AI-based decision support. We've done a lot. This includes decision making, on the fly, humans interacting with the data in the form of applications or with agents. But this also includes predictive modeling, whether it's forecasting, anomaly detection, other types of modeling. And the next generation of your math teacher is what we've been thinking about here and implementing in our product. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about each one. First one, on high accuracy. We've done a ton of work in building an agent orchestration system that's really designed for data-based decision analytics. Unlike other agentic orchestration systems that are primarily based on text, ours was designed to do math from the ground up. And this is from Master Sergeant Will Haskell's presentation yesterday. But it gives you a sense of the orchestration system in C3 AI. So you can ask a question, for example, I just saw a new detection in satellite image X. Are there any other related observations in the past 30 days within a 500-mile radius of this detection? Can you correlate that with any mentions of entity Y? A very sophisticated set of intelligence questions. Underneath the hood, this requires information retrieval. This requires geospatial reasoning. This requires temporal reasoning. This requires invoking of smaller AI and ML models. It might involve visualization to share information back with a human. It might involve searching and finding external data feeds. All of this can happen in our agentic framework. And this is the heart, this is the foundation of the R&D we've done for the past several years. This is a patent we filed on agentic orchestration to do just this in 2022. We filed it in 2022 before agentic AI was cool, and this was granted in 2024. So we have done, this is the foundational R&D that we have done, and we have done that work to actually win in these types of use cases that you all will need to run your businesses. Underneath the hood, we've done that technical work. So one example, I want to highlight a few examples of that. One is our ability, the agentic orchestration methodology we use is built on a framework called CodeAct. And this is agent actions through code execution versus through text. This allows us to get lower hallucinations, higher token efficiency, and it builds in all the power of this code ecosystem that is so powerful today. So here, a different example you see is, can you check the inventory levels of parts? It mentions 3 parts that are below the reorder point. Figure out, what's the production impact and reorder more parts if you think there's going to be a high production impact. You can see the agent, as it's reasoning in this case, is actually reasoning through tool calling and through code execution. And this specific one question is going to lead to 9 tool calls, and tools are blocks of code that are executed in one single agentic step. And this is pretty cool because this means that intermediary outputs are kept outside of the agent, not cluttering the agent context windows. We're performing deterministic calculations in each step. And we actually pre-built analysis libraries that we're providing our dynamic agent, in this case, to do and use. And this is what gets us the high quality for these math-heavy use cases. Fully reconfigurable and configurable retrieval tool chains across all dimensions of what we've done: structured retrievers, unstructured retrievers, parsers, etc. And I want to give you one sense of this. What this means is, by the way, everything in our agentic AI system is fully configurable to the needs of the business. And you don't have to write code to set this up in production, which is what you might have to do with many other providers and technologies. You actually are configuring a pre-built product here and a pre-built fabric. So this, just to give you a sense of this, in one tool chain, which is an unstructured retrieval tool chain in C3, if a human asks a question, we first hit a query rewriting step, then a hybrid search step, and then you have 4 optional steps: semantic retrieval, metadata-based retrieval, keyword-based retrieval, graph-based retrieval. You can use one or all of them. You have a re-ranking step, you have a message building step, and you have a multimodal question answering step. Each one of these may have a dozen parameters behind them. And so you can think about the complexity of this, and there might be 20 of such tool chains within our agentic AI stack. And this gets to a very sophisticated system that can calibrate to high accuracy. This is just one visual of a graph ontology, knowledge graph running on top of our ontology for a financial services use case. And you can see some of the complexity that we're able to handle. This is for a set of SEC documents. And this is what gets us that accuracy. And this is benchmarking 3 individual deployments of our agentic AI products over the last year. And we're consistently beating many of the other alternatives that companies have compared us to across. This is talking about a sales use case, a proposals use case, and a planning and zoning use case. Second, so the first was all about accuracy and how we achieved that. The second is we have an ontology-first architecture. And this is just showing you a video of our ontology. I wanted to explore one object, and you can see the declaration behind the scenes of that ontology object. It looks like a programming language because it is a programming language. It's a structured language. It's very JSON-like in syntax. We got honestly a little lucky here because we built this ontology before LLMs were a thing. And it turns out that these AI agents, these LLMs, are very good at understanding our domain-specific language, our DSL. It follows very strict grammar, just like programming languages do. And it's a really efficient way to bootstrap context for AI agents. So if you're running a business, you have tens of thousands of concepts and objects in your business, you want to be able to bootstrap the right context to the agent in the right time so it can do the right retrieval tasks, the right reasoning tasks. And that is very easily done with C3 AI. Third, we have all the guardrails, all of the tools, all of the checks that you need, all of the evaluations to run enterprise-grade agent operations at scale. I mentioned some of this yesterday, but we have really, I think, packaged it all nicely together, and we've released it for developers, so developers can see quite a lot, context, prompts, LLMs, evals, configurations, error messages, etc. But also administrators have different views, and if you're an administrator, a knowledge manager across the enterprise, you can see as an administrator all the users, their queries, the intermediary steps, the tool calls, agentic calls, and so this gives you great transparency into what's going on in your agentic systems. Multi-agent workflows. We've done a lot of work here, and this is the agentic process automation product that I was talking about yesterday and then earlier in this talk. Build and run any business workflow across your enterprise data that's mapped to C3 ontologies with no code. You can actually create this from natural language. You can create this in production. You can define the execution. You can test and publish. This is really great for business teams that are if you have developers, you have IT teams that have configured an application on C3 AI, now your business users can infuse their knowledge into that application, into that ontology, and do that at scale. If you haven't seen this, I encourage you to come to our 1 p.m. breakout today, where we're actually going to do a hands-on lab on agentic process automation, so please do join for that. I know many of you asked me about that yesterday. So here I'm going to go through one example here. I'm generating a workflow for contract negotiation briefs. This is around a supply chain use case. Users are going to provide a contract, a number of interests. The workflow will generate an output similar to a document. You can inline, in production, I can upload a document template here. I can have the agentic system now parse that document template, so it's going to understand a prior negotiation brief that was maybe done manually, and it's going to then try to copy that. It has enough intelligence, enough instructions that it can actually bootstrap that document, generate the workflow graph that it reasons that it needs to build a document of that nature, and then with our next release in spring at the end of April, we're going to have a full, we're going to release this full rich text document editing capability as well as part of our artifacts directly in line here. So I can not only build that artifact, I can actually generate it. And then once I have that workflow and I like it, I can actually run it. So here I'm going to run this thing. I'm going to punch in the contract ID number to kick it off. And then the agent is going to go and reason. It's going to first retrieve the specific contract in question here based on the contract number. So it's doing a lookup there. And then when it gets that data back, it's then going to look up get all the contextual data around that contract and then build that pre-negotiation briefing memorandum here. And you can see it actually does all the classification labels. This is unclassified. It has a table of context. It has purpose and backgrounds. It has the current requirements, etc. So we think this kind of a workflow helps with that tranche of adjacent use cases. Maybe not the major use cases because you're going to declare and manage them anyway as part of your application flows. There are going to be many adjacent use cases that you're going to be able to build around those initial ontologies. Okay. Decision support and predictive analytics. This is dramatically changing in the year 2026. 2025, 2024, and even today, there's so much talk about the large language models, about foundation models, but there's a maturity in the discussion around thinking about predictive analytics and decision support that I'm seeing this year. And I want to talk about a couple of capabilities that we've introduced. So first, decision support itself in terms of inline analytics. So as in the C3 AI, in our agentic AI system, as I'm working with data, as I'm interacting with the system, as you can see here in this example, it's totally unclassified, completely made up. So I'm running an investigation for Operation Sandstorm, and I'm asking for entities from, what are all the SIGINT and HUMINT reports that are relevant to my operation is my question. So as I'm asking the question, the system is tracking the history and progress of my investigation. And then it's automatically building artifacts behind the scenes. What do I mean by that? So if I zoom in on the right-hand bottom, I'm actually seeing there's 5 artifacts that are already built. These are analytic artifacts that the agentic system is tracking as I'm interacting with that. And these could be things like network analyses. These could be things like geospatial analyses, temporal analyses, visualization, charts, graphs, reports, or just the underlying data sets. And it's tracking all of that on my behalf so that at the end, once I have reached a conclusion or I'm building a hypothesis that I want to investigate further, I can then save that and I can share that with my colleagues, and someone else can pick up the investigation on my team, or we can collaborate on the same set of data sets. And that's very cool, very powerful, because it transforms the interaction mechanism from one of just question and answer to actually collaborative, interactive analysis. So that is going to be a part of our spring release as well. And then switching gears to predictive models. In the past, right, we did a lot of work with smaller AI and ML algorithms. And what we're seeing this year is a shift to actually either foundational models that are trained, your math teacher basically, that are trained on data for various use cases, or agentic systems that combine these AI/ML techniques with the latest and greatest capabilities of agentic AI. I want to talk about both. So first, on foundation models, on time series. In the past, so imagine a fleet of assets. Each asset has different instrumentation. Each asset in the past would require its own calibrated ML model if I wanted to do things like anomaly detection on that asset. So I would have a data scientist. They would build a set of algorithms. The algorithms, they might build a template that's self-training on each asset, or they may have to manually go and actually train a model for each asset. And then once they train the model and they like its performance, they evaluate its performance, and then they formally deploy that model into production. Until this year, that's probably how you went about doing machine learning on a fleet of assets. Now what we've done over the last year, we've worked very closely with some of you, including specifically, I want to give a big shout out to Flint Hills Resources. We really thank you for the partnership over the last year, and thank you for your data sets, most importantly, that have helped us really get to this point. But we have trained on the corpus of really high quality sensor data that we've gathered over the last year, a foundational time series embedding model. And this is a two-stage model. On the left-hand side, you see stage one is really a way of taking any temporal data input, and it could be temporal as well as contextual data input, and I'll show you this in a second, and embed that into our foundation embedding model. And then the second part of the model are task heads, which means that this model can do multiple things. So one model can do classification, it can do anomaly detection, it can do clustering, it can do segmentation, it can do specialized embeddings. So it's a very powerful, very expressive capability. In the past, we would have had multiple models and pipelines to do these things. And size-wise, by the way, this is a relatively small model. It's only 70 million parameters, to give you a sense. That is order of magnitude lower than the other specialized foundation models that are emerging this year. So Google has, for example, Times FM, has had for some time. Amazon has Chronos. There's many others in the world, but this model is one of the smaller ones, and I'll show you the results. It's equal or higher quality than the larger models, and by being small, just 70 million parameters, it means you can actually train it on your data. So this gets to Jim's point. Your data are valuable. They are where your business knowledge and intellectual property actually reside. This model is so portable that it can actually train on all of your data set. So Charm. So we can retrieve, you can use it in many different ways. One of the ways you can use it is you can retrieve similar events. So imagine a refinery, and imagine in that refinery you have had some failures in the past. You clearly know what has failed in the past. You can look at periods before that failure and say, hey, look, model, find me all the similar patterns to this failure mode across my refinery or across all my refinery fleet today. And it will go forth and it will find similar clusters, similar patterns automatically. And this kind of a capability is super powerful because it transforms the game in asset management. You can all of a sudden be much more proactive about how you're going about managing maintenance across your asset base. A second thing I want to highlight, just a different way of looking at things, encoding SME knowledge. So in the past, if I have a subject matter expert and let's say they go through recipes of how they look at manuals or how they look at failure procedures in combination with diagnostics based on sensor data, that would have to be some sort of a RAG, retrieval augmented generation capability, or some sort of an agentic lookup where I'm looking at a prediction from an algorithm, I'm cross-correlating that with the equipment OEM manuals, I'm cross-checking that with what's on the internet, I'm cross-checking that with my troubleshooting guides, etc. I'm looking at work orders. I don't have to do that much anymore because Charm, this model will actually handle all of that for me. I can take all of those data sets, the contextual data, the SME knowledge, and also contextualize it directly into the model. And so your SME knowledge can become a part of a learning ecosystem in a foundational way with this. Forecasting, it's also great at forecasting. On the left-hand side, you can see forecasting 21 quartiles, 0 shot. That means 0 training. Out of the box, it will do forecasts to the best of its ability, and then reconstruction as well, signal reconstruction. And then benchmarks, benchmarks. On benchmarks, we see on the left-hand side our forecasting scores relative to state-of-the-art models, and these are academic benchmarks. We meet or beat in most cases. And on the right-hand side, anomaly detection. Again, we're beating all of the foundational benchmarks from academia as of today, and that's with a model that's 10x lower than the other competition. We've published a lot in the space on blogs on our website. We have some academic papers in the works. And then we also launched this live on our website. So if you go to c3.ai/product/charm, you can see this foundational model, and it's in private preview. So if you're interested in trying it out, just fill out a form there or scan the QR code on your screen here. We'll work with you to get you access, early access into the model. It's a simple API-based access capability today. The second capability I want to talk about is agentic optimization. And this is inspired by our experience. And this is a different archetype. So here what we're doing is taking the traditional optimization techniques, but then wrapping them in an agentic experience so they're easier to deploy. Why did we do this? Anytime you're running large-scale optimizations, for example, you're running an optimizer to build ships running your machine shops, or you're running an optimizer in a food packaging business for an agribusiness like protein manufacturing. The formulation of the optimization, the constraints, the objectives, et cetera, it takes a lot of work to construct that problem, manual human work from expert scientists. We wanted to make that much more streamlined and efficient. So now we have a decision process extractor agent that's interacting with a simulation agent, that's interacting with a Python simulator. This thing then recommends a solver. Not only recommends a solver, it will actually formulate that solver, and then work with the Python simulator interactively to actually build that solver, and do this all autonomously, and then create a Python package that you can then deploy and it's seamless with C3 AI applications. This is state of the art in terms of performance. We're beating all of the performance benchmarks relative to, again, academic benchmarks, and we're launching that in this summer. Last, I want to have one more shout out to C3 Code. And I'm going to talk about a real use case that we got from a customer. So this is redacted because I didn't want to share some of the details here. But this is a company that runs an integrated supply chain. They own mines, they own rails, they own ports, third-party users of logistics. They have a few bullet points about their ports, a few bullet points about product and quality management. And they're really trying to manage this logistic networks. And they have 4 bullet points about their complications and challenges. This is not a lot to go off of, but all we did was feed this context into C3 Code together with the deep domain supply chain ontologies that we've built over the years. And out of the box, you get a very sophisticated application, within an hour. You have multiple pages where I can see KPIs. I can see my various parts of the supply chain that it maps out. It has graphs and charts for supply networks. It has multi-pages, modals, interactions, workflows, all fully built in. This is the power of what's possible today. If you're starting with a base ontology and you're starting with a business problem, you can very quickly extend applications to make them very rich. So in summary, what I've shown you is a confluence of capabilities. So we have capabilities in development and configuration for agentic AI, where for the first time we can really transform the connection to data sources, the mapping and transformation of those sources into ontologies. I've shown you the runtime. So as you're working with these systems, decision support, interactive analysis, next generation predictive models, next generation workflows through agentic process automation. And then a third tranche that we're introducing also this spring, which is autonomous AI operations. So agents that are continuously monitoring your environment, tracking the health of your data integration, tracking the health of your nodes, managing your node pools and runtimes all together. These factors, together with our platform and our 15 years of investment in applications, position us very well to help you in your enterprise transformation journeys, whether it's your major applications, adjacent workflows and applications, or the long tail of your use cases. And we look forward to the opportunity to work with you. Thank you.